In a significant development in the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine, the United States and Ukraine announced a historic agreement on natural resources which has drawn mixed reactions from global observers. This agreement, described as a total economic partnership by Scott Bessent, former Treasury Secretary under Donald Trump, is intended to bolster Ukraine's economic recovery and provide the United States with preferential access to Ukraine's mineral resources. The deal was officially signed on April 30, 2025, and includes the establishment of a United States-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund. This fund aims to accelerate investments in Ukraine's critical mineral resources, which play a vital role in technology manufacturing, defense systems, and green energy. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky characterized the agreement as truly equal, emphasizing that it provides mutual benefits for both nations. Despite lacking explicit security guarantees that Ukraine had sought, Zelensky noted that the agreement underwent significant changes during negotiations, stating, "Now it is a truly equal agreement that creates an opportunity for quite significant investment in Ukraine." The deal also stipulates that profits from the investment fund will be reinvested in Ukraine for the first decade before being distributed among partners. This aspect seeks to ensure that the economic benefits directly support Ukraine's recovery efforts post-conflict. In the wake of this agreement, Russian officials have reacted defensively. Dmitry Medvedev, a close ally of President Vladimir Putin, claimed that the United States has broken Ukraine by compelling it to enter this deal. He suggested that the agreement serves American interests rather than fostering genuine peace in the region. Meanwhile, a Republican senator has warned that Russia could face bone-crushing sanctions if it attempts to manipulate the situation to its advantage. The geopolitical implications of this deal are profound, especially as the conflict continues to escalate. As Ukrainian forces face ongoing assaults from Russia, including a recent drone strike in Odessa that resulted in civilian casualties, the urgency for enhanced military support from the U.S. is evident. The Trump administration has also indicated its intention to allow Ukraine to purchase U.S. weapons for the first time since Trump's return to office, which could further alter the dynamics on the battlefield. Scott Bessent emphasized the agreement's importance, stating that it sends a clear message to Russia about the unified economic goals of Ukraine and the United States. He asserted that the American people don't make any money if Ukrainians don't prosper, reinforcing the idea that both nations are now aligned in their economic interests. This partnership is seen as a strategic move to strengthen Ukraine's position in any upcoming negotiations with Russia. As the situation evolves, it remains to be seen how this agreement will affect the broader conflict and whether it will lead to a shift in Russia's approach to negotiations. Zelensky's call for increased sanctions against Russia highlights the ongoing struggle for Ukraine to secure both military and diplomatic support. The coming weeks will be critical in determining the future trajectory of the conflict and the potential for a lasting peace. In the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine, recent escalations have led to devastating consequences, including several deadly drone strikes and significant geopolitical developments. On May 1, 2025, a Russian missile attack on the port city of Odessa resulted in the tragic deaths of 7 individuals, including a 46-year-old port worker who succumbed to injuries sustained during the strikes. This incident marks a grim continuation of the violence that has plagued the region since the onset of the war. The drone strikes, which included the deployment of 21 drones targeting Odessa, caused extensive damage to residential buildings and critical infrastructure, igniting fires and displacing local residents. President Volodymyr Zelensky condemned the attacks, asserting that Russia continues to disregard calls for a ceasefire and escalates its military operations instead. For more than 50 days, Russia has been ignoring the American proposal for a full and unconditional ceasefire, Zelensky stated, urging for stronger sanctions against Moscow. Amidst the turmoil, a significant political shift was observed as the United States and Ukraine finalized what has been described as a historic natural resources agreement. This deal, hailed by Scott Bessent, Donald Trump's Treasury Secretary, as a total economic partnership, aims to enhance Ukraine's access to its mineral resources while also providing the U.S. with preferential terms for investment. The agreement is expected to yield direct financial contributions from the U.S. and allow Ukraine to purchase U.S. military hardware for the first time since Trump's return to the presidency, signaling a potential shift in military dynamics in the region. The implications of this deal are profound. It grants the U.S. preferential access to new projects within Ukraine's extensive mineral sector, which includes critical materials like copper, nickel, lithium, and titanium, resources essential for defense systems and green energy technologies. Prior to the conflict, minerals accounted for a significant portion of Ukraine's GDP and exports, highlighting their economic importance. In the wake of the agreement's announcement, Ukraine's international bonds rallied, enhancing the country's ability to raise capital for reconstruction efforts estimated to exceed $500 billion. This financial boost comes at a critical time as heightened tensions and ongoing military engagements challenge Ukraine's economic stability. The geopolitical landscape remains fraught with tension as well. Russian officials have accused Ukraine of civilian casualties in airstrikes, but Ukrainian military spokespeople contest these claims, asserting that their operations target military installations. The complex web of accusations and military actions underscores the ongoing volatility in the region, with both sides preparing for what appears to be a protracted conflict. As the situation develops, observers are keenly watching for further military engagements and the impacts of international diplomatic efforts. The U.S.-Ukraine resources deal could redefine economic and military support structures in the region, potentially leading to a new phase in the conflict. However, the persistent violence and tragic loss of life remind us of the urgent need for a diplomatic resolution and lasting peace. The international community's response in the coming days will be crucial in shaping the future trajectory of this conflict. In the intricate landscape of international diplomacy, the actions and decisions of key figures can have profound implications. Recently, the spotlight has turned to Steve Witkoff, President Trump's special envoy to the Middle East, who was under scrutiny for his handling of negotiations with two of America's foremost adversaries, Iran and Russia. Insiders and allies have expressed concern over Witkoff's unconventional approach, particularly his solo dealings with Russian President Vladimir Putin and his strategies for engaging with Iran. Sources close to the situation have revealed that Witkoff's style significantly diverges from traditional diplomatic norms. He has been observed participating in high-stakes meetings without the usual entourage of advisors, often relying on Kremlin translators. This unorthodox approach has raised eyebrows among seasoned diplomats and experts alike. John Hardy, director of the Foundation for Defense of Democracy's Russia program, emphasized the importance of having experienced negotiators present during discussions with Putin, stating, "Anybody engaging in these kinds of talks with Putin would benefit from having experienced Russia hands on his or her team." Witkoff's recent meeting with Putin exemplified these concerns. Arriving at the Kremlin without any advisors, he greeted the Russian leader as if they were old friends. A stark contrast to the protocol usually observed in such high-level discussions. In a candid assessment, a former member of Trump's administration described Witkoff as a nice guy but a bumbling f-king idiot, suggesting that his lack of experience in diplomacy and foreign relations could jeopardize U.S. interests. His dual role as Middle East envoy has added complexity to his responsibilities as he simultaneously attempts to negotiate peace in the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas, as well as address Iran's nuclear ambitions. While Witkoff initially secured a 2-month ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, subsequent negotiations have faltered. After claiming to have reached a deal for an extended ceasefire, he was blindsided when Hamas countered with an offer that fell short of his expectations, leading to the collapse of negotiations shortly thereafter. Reflecting on his experience, Witkoff remarked, "I even thought we had an approval from Hamas. Maybe that's just me getting duped." Critics have pointed out Witkoff's naivety in assuming that adversaries such as Hamas and Iran could be reasoned with through direct engagement. Shiri Feingrossman, a former head of regional affairs at the Israel National Security Council, noted that Witkoff's understanding of these groups' motivations reflects a dangerous miscalculation. "We have to understand our enemies through their lens, not ours," she stated, highlighting the ideological underpinnings that drive the actions of these regimes. Compounding the challenges of his role, Witkoff's lack of diplomatic experience has been further criticized in the context of U.S. negotiations with Iran. Despite Iran's current vulnerabilities, Witkoff's strategy has raised alarms among experts who fear that any concessions could be exploited by Tehran. Andrea Stricker, a research fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, warned that a temporary rollback of Iran's nuclear program would not be sufficient to mitigate the long-term threats posed by its continued enrichment capabilities. Former National Security Advisor John Bolton was even more blunt in his critique, labeling Witkoff's discussions with Iran as a waste of oxygen. Additionally, the diplomatic landscape has been complicated by the U.S.'s recent signing of a historic natural resources deal with Ukraine, which has been framed as a significant partnership between Washington and Kyiv. This agreement aims to provide the U.S. with preferential access to Ukraine's mineral resources and includes provisions for military support, marking a shift in Trump's approach to the conflict with Russia. However, concerns persist regarding the simultaneous management of these negotiations by separate envoys for Ukraine and Russia, which has led to confusion and potential misalignment in U.S. strategy. As Witkoff continues to navigate these high-stakes negotiations, the question remains whether he can effectively balance the complex demands of diplomacy in the Middle East and Eastern Europe. With critics calling for a more cohesive strategy and experienced negotiators, the future of U.S. relations with both Iran and Russia hangs in the balance. The coming months will be critical as Trump's administration seeks to solidify its stance against adversaries while managing the intricate web of international alliances and rivalries. As events unfold, the effectiveness of Witkoff's approach will undoubtedly shape not only his legacy but also the broader geopolitical landscape. In a significant development that underscores the intricate dynamics of international relations and resource management. The United States and Ukraine have finalized a landmark agreement granting the U.S. preferential access to Ukraine's rare earth minerals. This deal, which comes after months of tense negotiations, marks a pivotal moment in U.S.-Ukrainian relations, particularly as both nations grapple with the ongoing war instigated by Russia. The agreement, officially known as the United States-Ukraine Reinvestment Fund, was announced on May 1, 2025, and is designed to facilitate American involvement in the development of Ukraine's rich natural resources. During a recent interview, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent emphasized the deal's broader implications, stating, "This agreement signals clearly to Russia that the Trump administration is committed to a peace process centered on a free, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine over the long term." The backdrop of this deal is a complex interplay of diplomacy and negotiation, highlighted by a notable meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at Pope Francis' funeral in late April. Reflecting on their interaction, Trump described it as a moment of solace, acknowledging the dire situation in Ukraine where casualties continue to mount amid the ongoing conflict. "A lot of his people are dying," Trump remarked, revealing a moment of empathy towards Zelensky's plight while simultaneously expressing concerns about the future of U.S.-Russia relations. The negotiations leading to this agreement have been fraught with difficulty. Zelensky and Trump have had a tumultuous history characterized by heated exchanges and accusations. In February, a contentious meeting in the Oval Office nearly derailed the potential for collaboration when Trump accused Zelensky of prolonging the conflict and failing to adequately support U.S. interests. "You don't have the cards," Trump reportedly told Zelensky during that meeting, showcasing the tense atmosphere surrounding their discussions. However, the recent agreement signifies a turning point. Zelensky strategically leveraged Ukraine's mineral wealth to secure U.S. backing, a move that analysts believe is crucial for Ukraine's long-term stability and defense efforts. The deal promises U.S. companies preferential rights to access essential resources including lithium, titanium, and natural gas, while also ensuring continued military support from the U.S. to counter Russian aggression. In a statement following the signing, Zelensky hailed the agreement as truly equal, emphasizing its potential to attract global investments and enhance Ukraine's economic resilience. Yet the deal's finalization was not without controversy. Some Ukrainian officials expressed concerns about the terms, fearing they could amount to extortion or unfavorable concessions under pressure from the Trump administration. As the geopolitical landscape continues to evolve, the implications of this agreement extend beyond mere economics. Experts suggest it represents a calculated effort by Trump to solidify his administration's influence in the region while addressing domestic concerns about U.S. investments abroad. This partnership is going to be fundamental to the peace process and is committed to Ukraine's long-term success, a senior U.S. Treasury official noted, reinforcing the notion that this deal could reshape future negotiations with Russia. Moving forward, the success of the United States-Ukraine Reinvestment Fund will depend on effective implementation and the ability of both nations to navigate their complex relationship amidst external pressures. As tensions with Russia remain high and the war in Ukraine rages on, both Trump and Zelensky are tasked with not only maintaining their partnership but also ensuring that it translates into tangible benefits for their respective countries. The world will be watching closely as these developments unfold, with implications that may well extend beyond the borders of Ukraine.